a choice theory of metaphysical possibility. Here's the outline. I will go through essence and then present a modality, theory of essence, and a possibility, theory of modality, and in the end, an accessibility, theory of possibility. And I will start with Saul Kripke's work on essence, because it was him who revived the Aristotelian essentialism. So roughly put, he talks about identity, but I think it's a constitution relation. So water, it is composed of hydrogen dioxide, H2O composition. So some might think that, especially that it's conceivable that water is composed of H2O2, but that composite is illusory. It is, there is an illusion of contingency that water is not necessarily constituted by H2O. So Saul Kripke talks about fool's gold, or maybe fool's tiger as well, and this is fool's water. And the constitution relation is like a supervenience relation, a metaphysical determination from the bottom to the higher level without reduction. So water is real at the ecological level, and the molecule at the molecular level, hydrogen dioxide, are both real, and the relation is a metaphysical relation of constitution and described as supervenience. So having said that, determinism, because the focus of this talk is choice, possibility, determinism has the following problem. So a system closure, physical state transition, given that prior physical events sufficiently determine posterior ones sufficient cause. The problem of mental causation, mentality, given the ontological dependence, the supervenience between mind and brain, and in the end, well, brain is physiological or biological object, physical. So there's the question of the temporal determination. Where does the mind come in? If the physical, prior physical causes sufficiently determine the posterior physical effect, then there's no place for the mind, and that's Jack Wong Kim's problem. But then there's determinism, but are they compatible? Whether we could have determinism and also indeterminacy. So for those that think it's incompatible, well, there are some that thinks that free will and determinism are incompatible, but I'm trying to think in terms of the compatibility between indeterminacy and determinism. So of course, incompatibilism, they think incompatibilists, they think that without alternatives there's no free will. And of course, metaphysical determinism, because prior events sufficiently cause posterior events, it seems that there are no alternatives. But Robert Keynes, indeterminism, in terms of randomness, he thinks that that's when we have an open future, prior physical events underdetermine posterior physical events, and that underdetermination, he understands that as randomness, and he tries to locate free will through responsibility there. So possibility, we can think that that's how it would open up a choice theory, but it'll be clear towards the end. So naturalism, given what I said, that could be an illusion of reality, because if the world is determined in a way that there's no alternative, then an alternative that's conceivable that I think that I could have not continued with my presentation. It's an alternative, but it's not real, because on a certain version of metaphysical determinism, that conceivable alternative is just an illusion, like H2O2 being a composite of water. It's conceivable, but it's just an illusion. So that kind of possibility is merely fictitious if on that version of metaphysical determinism, the interaction between the ontology of natural sciences, or even naturalism and metaphysics. Alexander Bird, when he talks about law, no mixity, there is the forward determination, that's a metaphysical relation, and the upward determination, that's also metaphysical, but the first thing we think in terms of causation, that's the second thing, ontological dependence or constitution, better way to think about that. And that relation, although there are conceivable alternatives, what it really is, the physics, the chemistry, the biology, the psychology restricts what's metaphysically possible. So metaphysical possibility is restricted by physical possibility, for example. So the world and its metaphysics, that's when we think about the world, because when we do metaphysics, especially when we do a priori, investigation, conceivability, there are possibilities that are not physically possible, but I would restrict metaphysics with a reality. So having said what essence, and using constitution to think about essence, I haven't touched modality, because modality, to use modality to conceive, to understand essence, that's one way to do it. So, and that's another thing that Saul Kripke did. So Richard Nixon is, in the actual world, is 37th president of the United States, but Saul Kripke's contingency, he pointed out that it is contingent. Hubert Humphrey could have won the election then. So it is a fact, an actual fact that could have been different. That it's possible that Richard Nixon is not the 37th president of the United States. Counterfactually, Hubert Humphrey is the 37th president of the United States, and that counterfactuality depends on an alternative history, such as one in which Richard Nixon died young. And so that's one way his presidency is contingent. Possibility. So in the context of analyticity, because Kripke was trying to get out of the modality, the metaphysics, the revival metaphysics, and to come out of a phenomenon that could be characterized in the following way. Suppose we define human, the word human, with the phrase hairless biped, or maybe it's necessary and sufficient, maybe. And that's Rudolf Carnap's necessity. It's not the kind of necessity that Saul Kripke thinks about, because it's semantic. It's a semantic conception of necessity, because it's true in virtue of meaning, because the word human is given meaning with the description being hairless, biped. So it's necessary because of the meaning of the word human, and that semantic entailment explained the truth that's in virtue of meaning, and that way to understand necessity using analyticity. That's one way. That's not what Saul Kripke is doing, and he contrasts his way with the contingent a priori. And Quine's empiricism would have pointed out something that's against the Carnap's project. So Quine's objection to the quantified modal logic, and in the end, the modality, is that whether something is larger than 7 necessarily depends on the description. So the number of planets is larger than 7. It's a fact, it's true, but it's not necessary. But if we were to describe the same object, the number, to refer to that with numeral 9, 9 is larger than 7, that's necessary. So whether it's necessary depends on how you describe the same fact. So it's a linguistic relativity that shows what is necessary or not rely on how you describe the subject, let's say, and so in relation to the predicate, and also the way you described it makes it history dependent, right? Because the number of planets could have been knocked out, or a planet could have been knocked out of course, or history could have been different, such that the number of planets is not larger than 7. So that linguistic relativity underlies Quine's objection to modality. But here's one way to understand Quine's objection and put forward necessity. If we were to have a referential reading of Quine's 2 sentences, so here's an epistemic conception of how that the sentences, one is necessary and one is not, because one is a priori, well, given the way we understand mathematical knowledge. Well, it's a priori that 9 is larger than 7. So if we refer to 9 as 9, using the numeral 9, then yeah, the sense of necessity could be explained because of how it's described. If we refer to the number 9 using the number of planets, then it is not a priori. So that sense of necessity is lost. So that's how I would understand Quine's objection, using the same modality, the objective modality that in the end Saul Kripke through various other philosophers described. So yeah, okay. And that's, again, the distinction between metaphysics and epistemology and the corresponding possibility. It is not epistemically indeterminate that the number of planets is larger than 7. It's just that it's not known. So with that epistemic conception, we'll see that the putative possibility of course, it is possible, but holding the referential reading fixed, it's not a possibility because 9 is larger than 7. So having conceived essence using modality, what could have been different, and here's the possibility theory of modality. But first, roughly put, so modality, to understand essence, what's necessary, right? Metaphysically necessary. That's something instantiation property. So that's for essence, something as the essence that P entails that it has, it is a necessary property, metaphysical necessary property that P, right? But I still didn't bring in possibility into the picture, even if necessity is something modal. So when we talk about possibility, a problematic formulated by Saul Kripke again, transworld identity. So to approach this problem, individuality. When we think about alternatives, we think about worlds. Worlds in which Nixon died young. Well, he didn't die young in the actual world, but there are worlds in which he did. So those are the alternatives. But the problem that Saul Kripke points out is with transworld identity. But it's very simply understood. If we got the same object, well, at the same time, at least at different worlds, it might instantiate different property. So Nixon, at the age of 5, he could have died, and in those worlds in which he died, that's the same object instantiating different properties. So that's how different worlds are like, and using worlds understand different possibilities. So different possible worlds. So having an intra-world individuation, well, because individuating Richard Nixon, it's a person, he is a person, and we individuate, is it only the body, and whether the property that morally belongs to him constitutes his self, and whether the person and the self, the body, the brain, all this having individuated the object in the world, within the world, the intra-world individuation, then we can think about the interworld identification. And for Kripke, it's not through the telescope, against the backdrop of the counterpart theory. So, but there's an objectivity towards possibilities, right? And we can understand that using Robert Stolnaker's moderate realism, well, possible worlds are simply what the world could have been. And yeah, the world could have been such that Nixon died young, but the world could not have been that Nixon is a robot, because the actual fact is that he is a person. It's his essence that he is a person, so it's impossible. So there are no possible worlds in which Nixon is a robot. But one way to understand the reality is using quantification, roughly, that it's something that we can quantify. Or it is as real as a Quinian ontologically committed object. So it's not David Lewis realism, but possibilities. It's beyond being able to make sense of our modal talks. It's possible worlds are in our ontology as things that are quantified over are real. So that objectivity helps us to understand information, because if we said Nixon decided to spy on someone, so at a certain time he make that decision, but the possible world semantics, the content of this sentence includes possible worlds in which Nixon was making a decision wearing pajamas or wearing a suit. It's underdetermined, underspecified, but those possible worlds, whatever they are, the objectivity towards what's possible or not, even though it's underspecified, when we, after the sentence, the content is determined. So it outruns what we know priorly, and the information imparted and the corresponding externalism needs that objectivity. And counterpart, it's not David Lewis' counterpart theory, but I use that for my epistemology. So, well, knowledge compatibility. So possibility that's compatible with your knowledge, that's an epistemic possibility. So it's compatible with my knowledge that right now it's raining in the Philippines. It is also compatible with my knowledge that it is not raining in the Philippines. So both are epistemic possibilities relative to me. But for some other people, they may know better. So either one of those possibilities are not compatible with our knowledge, and that's how it is not an epistemic possibility relative to them. So my indistinguishability, it's very simple. Holding what you know at this moment. For us, let's pretend that Nixon made, well, maybe it's true that he made a decision to spy on someone while wearing pajama, but then we didn't know the actual fact. So when we say that Richard Nixon decided to spy on someone at a certain time, it is epistemically indistinguishable from the actual world that Nixon was in suit. So both are epistemically possible. Of course, we can distinguish someone wearing pajama and someone wearing suit, but we can't distinguish which is the actual world. And given Nixon wearing pajama is the actual world, we can't distinguish some counterfactual world in which he was wearing suit from the actual world. So that's indistinguishability, and it actually has a relation of accessibility that's the same as David Lewis counterparthood, and the epistemic externalism permits object to be determinate because, well, it's not Nixon being an object that's indeterminate or even vague, wearing either thing, but it is our ignorance that it's possible that he's wearing either or even some other clothing. So, and this brings in determinacy and indeterminacy in terms of identity and history. The actual world, it has a determinate identity. It is what it is and not any other thing. But how history evolved, the future is open, and that openness, I understand that using indeterminacy, and it's the object and its identity, it is determinate, but its history across time, the temporality, it is indeterminate. And that's what's most confusing about what I'm gonna say, but I'll try to make it clear, my theory. And of course, Gareth Evans he has a proof of the impossibility of object indeterminacy, or under the name of vague object, he thinks it's impossible, and he has a short paper that proves its impossibility. So the issue with there being no indeterminate or vague object relates to quantum mechanics, but I will stay at the level of ecological object, everyday object, but my theory carries downward. So world-bound object, it's not David Lewis, again, it's not his theory, world-bound individual, but having identified certain object within the world, then we can think about the same object in other world using metaphysical accessibility. And here's my last section using Kripke's modal logic accessibility. So given the way it is, the present state of the world, all fact until now, well, that's all fact from the past until the present state, it constitutes the present state. The future is open. And to think, well, and to bring in Saul Kripke's accessibility relation, it's a well, the relation has various properties. It could be an equivalent relation. It could be transitive, non-transitive, anti-transitive, reflexive, reflexivity, and symmetry. This relation, the variation in relation property gives us different system of modal logic. So that's Saul Kripke's work using possible worlds and accessibility to understand what has been done using axiomatic systems with different properties. And metaphysical possibility is very simple. It's accessibility from a time. So from the present state, what's accessible from a time, from present, that's the metaphysical possibility. Of course, that's very much against the orthodoxy, because from now on, it is metaphysically impossible that I did not utter what I uttered 30 seconds ago, because it's a fact. Although it is metaphysically impossible from a prior time that I did not utter those things. And that's how I would present the metaphysics of the world under determination. So, well, that's a very simple way to understand metaphysical indeterminacy, having pointed out that there's a difference between an object with indeterminate identity and the same object with indeterminate history. So metaphysical indeterminacy, temporarily prior to an act, before someone did something, there it is a possibility of an agent that he did other acts, right? So there's the actual act that he performed, and there are possibility of the act that he didn't do. So that's how it is that it is metaphysically indeterminate what someone would have done. And that's, well, Henry Frankfurt's understanding of libertarian free will. Of course, the way he formulated that is for him to present his own compatibilist theory of free will. But so there's the actual action, and there are various other counterfactual actions. So given a certain time, there are various possibilities, and then the actual action that's been performed, chosen, and those forgone, they are the counterfactual ones. They were possible, and that's how libertarian free will is. The Frankfurt thing that it is not compatible with determinism, metaphysical determinism, and here is where I come in and say that we can have both metaphysical determinism and libertarian free will through a metaphysical indeterminacy, a temporal metaphysical indeterminacy. We understand decision simply as a metaphysical necessitation through agential determination. So at a certain time, perception or various input, past conditioning, reinforcement, history, and genetics underdetermine what we will do. And it's agents determination that various possibilities are among them. One of them is chosen. So that's it. That's if if what I described is reality, then that's one way to understand Roderick Chisholm's agent causation. It's so the world is well, especially having free will evolved, that there are human beings, libertarian free will like us. The world is an indeterministic state machine. State transition is indeterministic. And once a prior state transitioned into a posterior state, they're counterfactual posteriority. They're counterfactual posteriority. Well, what's prior and what's posterior, once a decision is made, there are other posterior states that's only counterfactual, and there's the actual one. And the transition, of course, to go back to the problem of mental causation, if we have indeterminacy of state transition, and mental causation comes in simply by making a difference to how it transition. And the physical, at a certain time, the physical states determine brain state, mental state, but across time, a certain mental state and even a certain physical state, if it constituted the mind, underdetermine temporally the posterior physical state and the corresponding mental state. So agency is constituted by dynamically through state transition. So, and of course, bringing in the counterfactual decision. So chance, that's the choice theory of metaphysical possibility. I understand chance using choice. So people could have made different decisions, and what's chance is what people would have decided. Instead of understanding choice using some indeterminate randomness, I understand chance using choices. So, but let's interact with Alastair Wilson's actuality, because he uses a modal realism from David Lewis in quantum mechanics. So the parallel world, each is relative to itself. It is its own actuality, but I think that there's only one world, only one actual world, and although it's temporally indeterminate, well, there is a necessity that it is what it is, and that necessity is through its identity. The object is determinate. It's not an indeterminate object, the actual world, but it has a indeterminate history. So, of course, at the background, I can use a modal logic, even to qualify over possible worlds, and use a predicate as a stability relation, which would be a modal logic using predicate, first order predicate logic, even if we use virtual class. So the logic of the world, given how the metaphysical as a stability is, would be non-transitive, reflexive, and anti-symmetric. So here's the summary. I first talked about essence, and using water as an example, the necessary constituent, what makes water water. And modality, using modality to understand essence. So what's essential of something is what it could not get away with. So that's a modality, understanding of essence. What it could not, it's still not using possibility, and especially the possible world. Understanding of modality, well, what's necessary is simply what's metaphysically, well, in all metaphysical possibilities, it is the case. So, but then possibilities, and especially using modal logic, that's that uses an accessibility relation to understand possibility. And in the end, that's one way to do metaphysics, and that's my metaphysic with the corresponding metaphysical accessibility relation, with that relation applied temporally. So thank you very much.